Now that we've set up the first TGV line, we're going to amend our diagram to include a further 2 cities, and this will form TGV line B. And basically we are going to have a route that goes from city 1 to a new city 4, joins back on the main route to city 2, then peels off again to a new city called city 5, which then joins to city 3. And the diagram will look a little bit like this. So city 4, we are going to, this is city 1 station, city 4, we are going to build in one of these areas. And I'm thinking maybe of kind of this plateau in here. So it's going to be a very tortuous route, basically tunnels mostly, and it's going to come back through these valleys and join up to city 2 here. So we'll get on and start constructing this route, and I'll join you shortly once that's completed. Why does this always happen on Transport Fever? It assumes you're trying to go the other direction. So that's our junction. That's going to start taking us into the next valley. So this will be the station for city C4. Quite a very interesting route through the valleys and the mountains from city C1. So this will be a lovely route to travel on. And actually, because it's so far, even from the station that we've just built, to actually connect to city C2, we'll introduce a new city in this area as well. I'll add that to the diagram. This will be city C6, and then a very deep tunnel to connect back to city C2. And just to make it a little bit more complicated, the next city that I'm going to introduce, I'm going to require trains to reverse back out of the station because I want to build a city over here. So trains are going to come in on this route, pull into the station, and then come back out. So I think this is going to necessitate having some additional platforms because there's going to be quite a lot going on in this station. So what we've done is added another 2 platforms to city C2. The new line will cross over the original line for TGV line A. And we have crossover switches to allow us to make adaptable use of these platforms, and then trains will essentially reverse out and continue along this route. This will be the location of our next city. Lovely spot along the river. And you know what? I'm going to add another TGV served city in this location, which we will call City 7, and I will adjust the diagram to reflect that as well. We're going to rebuild this piece of track so that we can get a junction to join onto the station at this point, which basically means providing a flat spot before it goes down into the tunnel. Probably the best we can do in terms of speed. I'm not going to get a 300 junction. Too much slope there now, so we'll just have to pull back a little further on the tunnel. Perfect. And then we can join these up. So the next challenge will be timetabling, and the challenge here is how we are going to create this new line so that it doesn't interfere with the running of our existing line, and that means avoiding C1, C3 and C2 at the times that I've highlighted in purple. So we need to work out our timings to get between these new stations and then try and thread that so that it falls outside of the times that the stations are actually in use by the other line. So I've created a new line which I will use to test the TGV that I'm going to run, and we need to make sure that we prevent the other trains from running, because I don't want them to interfere with the timing test at this stage, and I'll let them go when we're ready to run them again. So I'm going to choose the Inui TGV, so the slightly different model and livery on this line. So I'll set that to the timing test. And hopefully by the time it gets to station C1 we'll be roughly on 00 time, so it'll be very easy to measure the timing. I can just note down what the time is without having to use a stopwatch. Let's skip ahead once it's come out. So we're going to hold it in the station until 00 on the clock. There we go. So I will come back with the timings and then we will have a go at creating the timetable. 6:30. Say 10:45 for that one. Call it 11 minutes, so we've got ourselves a bit of leeway. That's 14:30. C7. We'll call that 17:30. City C3 at the end of the line. The thing's taken about 22 minutes. Exactly 22 minutes. So we will plug those times into the timetable and then see what we can create. So now that we have the time-ins, the first thing that we're going to do is going to set up a train to leave TGV Depot 1 and City 1, and this will follow the route all the way to City 3, and it will go via City 4, City 6, City 2 in the center, cross over, go to City 5, City 7. Essentially this brings us to roughly the midpoint of the day, so we're able to, once we get to City 3, turn around and do the reverse route. Gets back very late, but we can basically just about fit this in there and back over the course of the timetable. What we will then do is obviously repeat the same thing coming from the other direction. We will have a train start at TGV Depot 3, start the day at City 3, run through to City 1, turn around and come back over the course of a day. Because then we have quite a lot of gaps, there's only one train leaving in them essentially in the morning. What we will then do is we'll introduce a train that actually starts the day at City 2, runs back to City 1, turns around, runs back to City 2. So this would be a shorter line that runs between this half of the section, and what this does, it gives us more opportunities for people to get on the train at these times of the day. And we'll do the same thing, we'll run a train in the opposite direction that runs from City 2 through 5, 7 to 3 and back. So we've got some good options there for people who need to get from one end to the other, get to these other cities on the cross lines. And this is all based on the timings that we just took. So the next thing to do will be to set up the trains and the timetables to run these routes. And what we're going to try and do with the timetables, it's critical when the train departs the depot and departs City 1, also when it arrives at City 3 to turn around. I'm going to put timing points in for City 2, both the outward and the inward train, but I'm not going to put specific timetable points for City 4 and City 6, City 5 and City 7 between, because it's running between these two in a linear way. It just needs to go as fast as possible. If it arrives early at City 2, then it can hold there. This is the control point. Specifically, I don't want it holding or doing any sort of maneuvers or controls at these two stations, so it just has to run through as quick as possible. So we'll try that. If we have issues with that, then we'll obviously have to plug in the times. To allow trains 7 and 8 to begin their journeys at City 2 in the centre of the layout, we've built the beginnings of a new depot where those trains will start and end their journeys at TGV Depot 2. So by this point, with all the lines set up, with all the alternative platform terminal options set up for all the lines, you can see it's starting to get quite complicated, particularly at City 2, and hopefully with the timetabling and the timings, this should all work out so that the trains aren't clashing with each other. Now what we will need to do once we start running the more local and regional lines is that this is going to have to be a crossover, because we're probably going to have slower tracks roughly in this position, so this will have to be a crossover that comes back in and loops over and back down, but we'll leave it there for now because we are not quite sure how many tracks I'm going to end up with, and so that will dictate the layout once we get to that point. So with the new trains in the depots and in the stations waiting to start cycle, we will test it and see how it works out with all 8 trains working together over the course of the timetable.